Welcome to the May edition of the Amherst Planning Board meeting. If I could ask everyone to please, while you're here this evening, to mute your telephone. Certainly, if you've been asked or wish to get up and did you want to say anything? Okay. If you wish to get up, when you get up in time to get up to the podium there, we'd ask too that certainly you speak into this, identify your name and address. If you wish to speak on a particular agenda item, as that agenda item is, we're talking about it, start to line up so we know this, so we can move right along with that. Because if I don't see anybody, I'm assuming that no one is interested in chatting about it. So, all right, a couple of housekeeping items. The planning board members are volunteers appointed by the town board. All right, the town board are elected officials. The planning board members make final decisions on site plans and subdivisions, and we're advisory only on rezonings and make recommendations to the town board. Town board receives the recommendations from the planning board and makes final rezoning decisions. Procedures and ground rules. The petitioner will present to the board on the agenda item. The board will ask questions and converse with the petitioner. I will then ask if anyone from the public has comments or questions on the agenda before them. The public comments are to be directed to the planning board members. Planning board will ask the petitioner to address any questions and comments from the public. There is a laser up there, pointer attached to the podium for use during hearings. If you use the laser pointer, please refer to the large screen at the left of the dais so that your comments and references to the petition are recorded. The presentation by the petitioner gets 15 minutes. Comments by a neighborhood representative spokesperson, generally the first one up, gets 15 minutes. Individual speakers get 3 minutes. So, the planning board members are appointed by the town board. We've talked about that. In the event that we have to evacuate the room, please exit out of that door, and that is blocked. Is that blocked over there? If it is, we need to move it. That can't be blocked. Is it open? Is it okay? Can we get out of there okay? Okay. Just want to make sure that it's not blocked. It looks, from my viewpoint here, it appears that it is. All right. Just want to make sure. Thank you so much. And for our next trick, here he comes again. Thank you so much for that. All right, I thought that was. So anyway, you exit out of that and exit out that way, or exit here and out the front of there. Do not come back this way. All right. Are we ready to rock and roll here? Our first item this evening by Benderson Development. Okay, and it is a request for major site plan review for a proposed office development, additional office building property located at 2420 to 2430 North Forest Road. Mr. Baglioli.
Good evening, sir. James Baglioli, Benderson Development, 570 Delaware Avenue, Buffalo, New York. I'm in-house counsel. I believe the board may be familiar with this site. Its location is the southwest corner of John James Audubon Parkway and North Forest Road. Let me just get the, oops, oh, we're going fast there. Its current zoning is New Community District, General Commercial, NCD-GC. Next page, please. The existing development is a two existing office buildings situated as follows. A 4,200 square foot building, that's number 24020, located along North Forest Road, and a two-story building at 31,526 square feet, that's 2430, which is located in the rear half of the parcel. The parking is dispersed throughout. You see the site there in yellow with the building up front and the building located in that area. The development size, the entire parcel is 4.65 acres. It's got about 163 feet of frontage on North Forest Road and 697 feet of frontage on John James Audubon Parkway. Its uses around it, to the north we have office, south is Ellicott Creek, to the east is the office, and to the west is a religious use. Next slide, please. The project is to add a 5,300 30 square foot new building. It's going to be an office building. It's going to change the parking on site We have 143 total parking spaces, update the utilities, and add landscaping. The rear of the site borders Ellicott Creek, is situated in a floodway, and we are requesting a sidewalk waiver along the parcel frontage on North Forest and John James Audubon Parkway. The sidewalks will go nowhere. There's nothing to connect them to. We did get a parking determination that we have an adequate parking on the site for this building. Next slide, please. This is the site plan. The buildings in gray are the two existing buildings. The larger two-story building to the left and the smaller building to the right. The new building is located in brown, shaded in brown, located along John James Audubon Parkway. We show the landscaping islands and the parking field, as long as a sidewalk, this is finicky tonight, which connects the two buildings in this area so that you can walk right between the buildings into the parking area. Next slide, please. This is the elevation for the building. It is an attractive building. It has a mix of brick and ephes, a lot of trim work, decorative trim work, as long as columns to break up the vertical massing along the building. It is consistent with the architecture that's there. It's a pretty simple project. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions. Joseph?
No questions.
No questions.
Anybody from the audience wish to ask any questions or comments about the project?
This one's an easy one.
Next item, item number 2. This is a request to rezone 3.61 2 acres of land, OBT 10B. Property located at 1350 Acre Road. Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Gilmore and members of the Planning Board. Sean Hopkins on behalf of 1097 Group LLC, which is an entity owned by Ellicott Development. Also with me is Tom Fox. We're here in connection with a project that some of you visited before. The property located at 1350 Eggert Road. I never remember which screen I'm supposed to point at. This one. Which is located here. Just to orient everyone, this is Eggert Road, Main Street, Crosby Boulevard. That site is currently zoned OB-TNB1, and that zoning classification was put in effect approximately 10 years ago. Next slide. We'll get into more detailed discussion in a second about what's there today, but as was indicated, the site is approximately 3.61 acres in size. You can see the back portion of that site consists of a parking lot. That parking lot is actually larger than what we need for the existing development. It's clearly in an area that has a wide assortment of uses and zoning classifications, including single family, the large former, I believe it was AM&A's at the corner of Main and Eggert, wide assortment of commercial zonings and commercial uses, and then of course a very large and nice single family neighborhood to the north and to the northwest. Next slide. Why are we asking for this rezoning? We're asking for this rezoning for two reasons. Number one, to infill the back portion of that site behind the existing parking lot with two additional two-story, 8-unit multifamily buildings, which we'll show you in a second. And then also, the rezoning will allow us to reuse some vacant commercial square footage on the first floor, which is approximately 5,130 square feet. Next slide. It's a color version of the concept plan we submitted. You can see the two proposed new buildings. Based on some input we received from the planning department and the supervisor, we've added some interior pedestrian connections and sidewalks. It is also important to note that my client did previously donate this property here, this L-shaped or Oklahoma-shaped parcel, to the town of Amherst as an extension of the existing park. And one of the design constraints that we needed to consider is there's a 20-foot wide recorded access easement to the group home located back here. So obviously, we cannot interfere or encroach with that existing access easement. Next slide. This is the elevation plans prepared by Sutton Architecture. One of the benefits of the zoning classification we're seeking is this project will now require review and a recommendation from the town's Design Advisory Board. Next slide. So this is an aerial photograph of the site. I want to illustrate a couple of things. Number one, I want to go back a little bit in terms of the history. This was formerly the Cannellation School. It was purchased by the existing owner in 2013. At that time, it was rezoned by the town board from CF TNB1, which is Community Facilities, to OBTNB1 on April 28th of 2014. Ultimately, on June 19th of 2014, this board approved the site plan for the project. That consisted of 38 apartments and 5,130 square feet of first floor commercial space, which is located here, approximately. Negative declarations were issued by the Town Board, Planning Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. And basically, the one issue we've had with respect to this property is we have been unable to lease the space. So the existing 5,130 square feet, which we envisioned as being appropriate for an office tenant, has not been leased. It's literally sat vacant for the past 8 years. Under the existing zoning classification, we cannot convert that space to residential units. If ultimately the requested rezoning is approved by the town board, we can provide 3 additional residential units in that space, which again is better than having a building that's been empty for nearly a decade, or at least that portion. Next slide. Copy of the concept plan, which I already showed you. Next slide. We've already looked at the elevation plan. Next slide. So obviously, in connection with any rezoning review by this board and subsequently the town board, the key inquiry is whether or not the request is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. In this case, clear as day, the requested rezoning is consistent with both figures 6A and 6 of the comprehensive plan. This is figure 6A, which designates those mixed-use areas, and clearly we are designated as a traditional area, as described on pages 334 through 336 of the text. And the bottom bullet point is a quote, literally, that, hey, we're going to encourage infill redevelopment, adaptive reuse of existing structures, and compact building patterns on these particular locations, which is exactly what we've done. Next slide. And this is figure 6 of the comprehensive plan that designates the project site as being appropriate for commercial and mixed use. Next slide. And then finally, although ultimately the town board will act as a lead agency, you will be issuing a recommendation to them. This project clearly will not result in any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts. We did submit a completed part 1 of the full environmental assessment form, the geotechnical report. We are in consultation with the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. I've already mentioned that the rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the benefits of the rezoning, including the fact that it will require the buildings to be reviewed by the Design Advisory Board. So with that being said, what we would ask you to consider this evening is recommending that the town board issue a negative declaration pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the rezoning of the project site to accommodate the additional infill redevelopment. If you have any questions, either myself or Mr. Fox would welcome the opportunity to address them. Thank you. Yes, the existing building will stay. That existing 3-story, approximately 55,000 square foot former Cannelation School building has already been successfully redeveloped, with the exception of that approximately 5,000 square feet of first floor commercial space.
So when you're referencing the existing reuse of structures, you're highlighting that building, and the other 2 proposed buildings are obviously.
Yes, you're exactly correct.
Anybody from the audience who should get up and speak on it? Please. State your name and address, sir, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can now. Yep.
Greg Dion. I currently am serving as the vice chairman of the, 1422 Eggert Road. Sorry about that. Currently serving as the vice chairman of the Amherst Traffic Safety Board, and I'm also a member of the Amherst Government Advisory Board, but I'm speaking tonight just on behalf of myself. In general, I am actually in favor of this rezoning to TI 2.5. I agree with Mr. Hopkins that the proposed rezoning classification is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The one concern I have is that a permitted use under TI 2.5 would include ambulance services, and I am not sure that ambulance services would be very appropriate for this particular area. I could be mistaken if that's not a permitted use. However, what I would urge the board to consider is permitting or recommending the rezoning to the town board, but with the deed restriction that would essentially not permit ambulance services.
We'll get some clarification on that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Fox, would you like to respond to that?
We would be absolutely fine with a condition that prohibits ambulance use on the site. It is important to note there are a series of conditions that are memorialized in a declaration of restrictions. Some of those include that we can't exceed the existing height of the building, et cetera, et cetera. As I said, if the rezoning is approved, there'll be actually no commercial use on the project site. But the speaker is correct. The zoning classification would allow that. So a condition recommending the town board prohibit that use, we have no objections.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Hearing's closed. All right. You want to take a couple of minutes just to everyone reach here, do their thing? There you go. All right, we ready?
Yeah, and slide it over a little bit.
All right,
Remember to get a neck deck.
item one. Item one, we're talking about seeker determination and site plan review. So I'll open that up, number one, for the seeker determination. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second? Second. We have a motion, motion by Dell, second by Joseph. All right. Questions on it? If not, roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Hahn,
Yes.
Penberthy. Yes. Raphael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right, second part of that, site plan review. It is actionable with some conditions. Do we wish to review those conditions one more time?
I have the conditions.
Can you, we can't hear you up here.
There are 6 conditions recommended for this site plan review. The first one is that conditions of approval stated in the Planning Department review letter of April 26th are addressed to the satisfaction of that department. Number 2 is that the conditions of approval stated in the Engineering Department review letter of April 25th, 2023, and the SWIP officers review letter of March 1st are addressed to their satisfaction. Number 3 is the conditions of approval of the Amherst Fire Chiefs Association review letter of April 21st are addressed to the satisfaction of the fire safety officer. Number 4 is that the comments stated in New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's review letter of April 7th are addressed as applicable. And then the last 2 conditions are that all dumpsters and mechanical equipment are screened appropriately. And finally, number 6 is as-built record drawings are required. Those are the conditions for your consideration.
Has everyone heard and understood the conditions? Yes. Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Motion by Dell, second by Hart. Roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Giuliani,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Tenbergy. Yes. Raphael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with the conditions. Thank you. Item number 2. My pages are screwed up here. Bear with me a moment, folks. All right, item number 2, this is a request for rezoning. With conditions, can we discuss the condition, please?
Yep, that a residential frontage be assigned pursuant to section 5A21 of the zoning ordinance, and that the use of the subject parcel as an ambulance service not be permitted.
Has everyone understood that that condition?
Yeah.
And we're okay with the addition to it?
Yep.
Thank you. And I have a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Carrie? Motion by Dell, seconded by Carrie. Roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Giuliani.
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Tenbergy. Yes. Raphael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with referral now to the town board. Thank you. All right, next item, item number 3. For that, we're going to ask the petitioner to come forward, please. We want to, there are some board members here who have a couple of questions. We want everyone to make sure this is not, we are not reopening a hearing. This is just to clarify some things that have occurred with relationship to this. So I will open it up. Does anybody on this board have any questions for the petitioner at this time? I'll start with you. Brittany?
I guess my concern was about the buffers right now. My concern was with the,
Turn it on.
my concern was with the buffers with the residential properties. You had indicated you're providing additional buffering, but that just included just the install of the vinyl fence, the 6-foot
No.
vinyl?
So I actually have a plan. Tom, could we pull that up? Just so we can talk about the plan.
And let me include, part of my question includes, was this in consult with the neighboring properties? Because obviously at our last, or at the public hearing, there was a lot of uproar about this property, or this parcel.
I did have a meeting with the neighbors. I did, I got a lot of opinions on what the fence should be made of. Eventually, I believe I got a letter saying they would prefer vinyl, so I went vinyl. I think it's not vinyl anymore. Now it's wood because they asked for wood, which is more solid. It's a board-on-board fence, which is an overlapping fence, so you can't see through it. So I'll go through it as soon as we get the PowerPoint. Can you hear me now? Okay.
When you're sitting in the back, you can never hear. I'm sitting here and I cannot hear. Okay. I'm just saying, that's why I moved up. All right.
So this is the original, this microphone is very odd. This is the original plan. Is that better? And at this point, in the original plan, we had 239 feet of frontage along Chateau Terrace. The building went all the way back. Could I have the next plan? We have since modified that plan, all right? We have provided, instead of 20 feet, which is the requirement for the buffering in the back, we provided 30 feet, all right? So we are a third larger than required by the buffer. We originally proposed a vinyl fence. We are now proposing a board-on-board fence, which is actually a condition of the planning department, asked for that, and the neighbors did want something other than vinyl. There were various requests. One was a stone. We're not going to do stone. We're going to do board-on-board. That fence is along this property line, and then you see the landscaping, which is also code compliant in front of that. So this area here to the building is 30 feet. Planning Department did ask for a wrought iron fence here. We did agree to that, and we did put that there. We did shorten the length of the building from 239 feet to 200 feet, so we brought the building away from the neighbors. In addition, we shifted the driveway, which is where this house is, also further away from the neighbors, and moved it 30 feet from the neighboring property lines. That allowed us to preserve 22 Chateau Terrace, which is what we're proposing to do now, and that was also a request of the neighbors, was to preserve that house. We are going to preserve 22 Chateau Terrace. We are going to rehab it and either rent it or use it as part of this development going forward. It'll still be a residential house. If you look through my bullet points here, just to summarize, we reduced the length of the building to 200 feet. That reduced the unit count from 48 to 44 units. We're preserving 22 Chateau Terrace. We also sat the parking garage wall 30 feet away from the right-of-way. So this is the parking garage. At one point, that was pressed up against the site. We pushed that all the way back behind the rear wall so that it's pushed further back away from the residential street. We did relocate, we did relocate 22, did relocate the driveway on Chateau Terrace. The 30-foot buffer has been proposed. We do have a 6-foot high board-on-board fence, and we exceed the parking requirement. Your code requires 72, and we're at 73 spaces. We did away with all the waivers. We have a single waiver now, and that's to actually add green space. And your code would require that this green space on either side of Fruhoff and Chateau Terrace, between the sidewalk and the road, be concrete. We're proposing to add grass, so that actually requires a waiver to add the additional green space. Our feeling is tailing into the residential development, green space is probably more attractive than concrete. So that is where we are.
One follow-up.
Yep.
Then, is there still sidewalks?
Yep. So you can see the sidewalks. Sidewalks are the gray in this area. The whole site is wrapped by sidewalks.
Okay, so the waiver for the tree grates and everything is to create more green space instead of concrete?
Yeah, so between the sidewalk and the road would be concrete under your current code, and we would put in tree grates so the trees would survive. We're proposing to have that as grass and then plant the trees in the grass. So the waiver is actually not to have the tree grates. If the board wants concrete, we could do concrete. It's not, we're open either way. We just thought it would look nicer. When I did meet with the neighbors, they seemed to prefer green space. Most people do.
No offense, I asked for vinyl. I have the exact
Excuse me.
right behind him.
This is not a hearing, sir.
The planning department asked for wood. I agreed to wood. If the neighbors want vinyl, it'll be vinyl.
Excuse me. This is not a hearing.
I'm open to whatever the board wants. If you want a vinyl fence, I'll put vinyl in. If you want board on board, I got a written memo from the planning department asking that it be wood and board on board. That's what I changed it to. I'm happy either way, whatever the board would like. It's not an issue to
Just to be
me.
clear, so to answer this gentleman's question, based on whomever agrees the most here, I
Yes.
guess, it could be vinyl, it could be board on board, it could be whatever they're asking for
Well,
to make everybody happy.
Board on board or vinyl, either of those two are fine with me, whatever the board would like.
Thank you. All right? Do you have any other questions?
I don't.
No.
Yes, you've agreed to let the existing house remain in place.
That's correct.
What are your plans for that house?
We're going to rehab that house and either use it for residential or it could be used for something like low density commercial, like, a massage place, personal service, right? Or we could use it for leasing for this, but we're going to rehab the outside of it and then probably reuse it as part of this project. We don't have a tenant. We just decided, 2 weeks ago we were going to save it.
Very good.
Yep.
Mr. Hart?
Yes, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
In the last hearing, many of the neighbors, citizens, public shared their views, and you have made some changes since then. Have you received any input after these changes from them?
I met with a small group of neighbors. There were 5 of them. I did show them the changes. I would say that they prefer we cut the project in half. That's not financially feasible for us. The original presentation, some of the requests were for increased buffer. We had 20 feet, we moved it to 30. There was a request to maintain 22 Chat Terrace, we did that. There was a request to push the building further away from the residential properties, we did that. We also pushed the driveway further back. We're open to any fencing materials. I think we've gone a long way with this project. So I don't think there's ever going to be complete buy-in from the neighbors on this project.
You said you met with a small group of neighbors?
Yes.
And they were fine with it?
I didn't say I didn't say that.
I misheard you.
I didn't say they were fine with it. I said I met with them and went over the changes.
I didn't hear, sorry, I'm having difficulty. What was the last thing you said?
I said I didn't say they were fine with it. I said I met with them and went over the changes.
Okay. So we haven't had an opportunity to hear back from them after the changes?
I've heard plenty back after the changes. This is the project. I mean, it's code compliant 100%. So we can't make any more changes at this point.
Thank you.
Joseph?
Yeah, I got one question. When we listen to the neighbors and we listen to the community, a major concern is infringement into their neighborhood.
Yes.
And they have concerns about parking, and they have concerns about safety, they have concerns about customers going through the neighborhood.
Yep.
Would you be willing to put a restriction or a limitation on the property for the 2 restaurant spaces, such as there would not be restaurants, they would be
No.
something other?
No. I mean, what you're asking me to do is waive a code compliant use and we comply with parking. And if I start doing that, what other code compliant things do I have to develop? The planning board is supposed to look at what's required by code, and we are code compliant for parking. What functionally gets built there is going to be a demand on tenants, and I don't know any tenant, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot tenant, restaurant tenant that's going to take the amount of parking we have. But I can't legally give up what's permitted by code, which is what you're asking me to do.
Well, to your own admission, you admit that it's not an attractive spot for a restaurant. So
I don't.
Hear me out.
Yep.
There are still plenty of commercial feasible businesses that you see up and down Main Street, retail, professional services, similar.
Yep.
All I'm asking is you to consider that and remove the desire for a restaurant.
We have laid this out for at least one restaurant, and we will not give up a code compliant use when we comply with parking. That if the town has an issue with parking, they should have not amended their code to make it code compliant. The issue is with the town board, not with me. I have a project that now complies 100% with the town code. I can't give up uses that are allowed by the town code. That's where we are.
You can, but you're not willing, so that's all I have.
Carrie? Okay. So, board, we're set with our, all right. So the first part here is the first vote is for seeker determination. Do we have a motion?
I would move, however, I would be proposing amending 8 and 9 to the negative declaration.
What would that achieve?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know.
We were permitted to strike
Yeah,
Harb's concern.
I realize, but I don't know what that would achieve.
Know the what?
That would achieve.
Because it's not a declaration that we would be making that is inconsistent with our thoughts.
Yeah, okay.
My proposal is the negative declaration as drafted, however, striking specifically with regards to number 8, the sentence involving the 2.5-story mixed commercial and residential building will be consistent in its form and character with surrounding land uses. As I do not feel that it is. To strike the sentence with regards to number 8.
That's the motion. Okay. So does everyone understand the motion? Up here. Okay, could you repeat it one more time? please?
Sure. We have before us a proposed negative declaration, and as written, I would move that. However, I would wish to amend it with regards to number 8, striking from the proposed negative declaration the sentence beginning, "The 2.5-story mixed commercial and residential building will be consistent in its form and character with surrounding land uses," as I do not find that to be proper considering the project and the neighborhood.
Does everyone understand it now? All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Could you repeat the motion, please?
Sure.
The motion for the amendment or for the secret?
This is for seeker.
Yes. Motioning to amend, correct. Motion to amend the proposed seeker findings, striking specifically the line within paragraph number 8, beginning "The 2.5-story mixed commercial and residential building will be consistent in its form and character with the surrounding land uses."
Question for, I don't know, chair or legal. Saying yes to that motion, does it approve a negative declaration?
Doesn't approve the negative declaration.
Okay,
It's a motion to amend the negative declaration. After the vote,
thank you.
you would need a second motion to approve it as amended,
Thank you.
if it passes.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Motion by Brittany, second by Joseph. Roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Sure. Yes.
Giuliani,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Penberthy,
Yes.
Raphael.
Yes.
All right, now that we've amended it, do we have a motion for a negative declaration? To approve as amended.
So moved.
We have a motion by Dell. Do we have a second? Second by Carrie. Roll call, please.
Gill,
No.
Gilmore.
Yes.
Giuliani,
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Penberthy,
Yes.
Raphael.
No.
Motion passes 4-2. All right. Next part of that motion. This is for the design exception. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Do we have a second? For failure for a second, I will second the motion. Roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore.
Yes.
Giuliani,
Yes.
Khan. Penberthy,
Yes.
Raphael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Site plan review. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? For the sake of a second, I will second it. Roll call, please.
Oh, if I may, just very briefly before that, I just wish to state for the record that as it's proposed now, I think the applicant, as stated today, has a project that is in conformity with our zoning code, and while that is not personally a structure that I find appropriate for the neighborhood, I don't see personally a mechanism to preclude what is being proposed.
Okay. We have that. Thank you. So I will call roll call again, please. Conditions, okay. Conditions, please.
Okay, you have an amended set of conditions in front of you that have been prepared and, is this on? Which are not largely different from the previous ones. First condition, exclude signage. These are all our typical ones. Dumpsters, mechanical equipment, et cetera, be screened. As-built record drawings be provided. That's the typical 3. Fourth one is that the Town of Amherst Historic Preservation Commission must approve the demolition of the accessory garage structure located at Chateau Terrace prior to the issuance of final approved site plan drawings by the Planning Department. That the parcels addressed 4549, 4546, 4564, along with those addressed 17 Fruhoff Avenue and 22 Chateau Terrace be merged into a single parcel. Condition 6, the storm piping underground inside the building footprint comply with the PCNYS tables 1102.3 and 702.2 as stipulated in the Town of Amherst Senior Plumbing Inspector's letter dated March 31st, 2003, which is the type of pipe that's required for any piping that's underneath the building. Condition 7, that the developer is committed to a payment of $33,199.86 to the Sewer Remediation Trust Fund. That payment must be received by the Town of Amherst Engineering Department prior to the issuance of any plumbing permits or acceptance of any PIP applications as stipulated in the Engineering Department letter dated April 3rd, 2023. Number 8, the petitioner addressed the concerns raised in the Town of Amherst Engineering Department Stormwater Management Officer letter dated February 7th, 2023 to the satisfaction of that officer. Number 9, that the petitioner requests permission from the New York State Department of Transportation to install bulb outs at the intersection of Main Street and Fruhoff Avenue as indicated in their letter dated February 14th, 2023 to the Town of Amherst Planning Department, and if permitted by NISDOT, the petitioner install the bulb out and any associated improvements and obtain the necessary permits from NISDOT. Number 10, that the petitioner additionally requests from NISDOT that the westerly 90 plus or minus feet of the Main Street frontage of the parcel inclusive of any bulb out be restricted to no parking. Number 11, that the petitioner obtain any required permits for any work within the Main Street right away from NISDOT. Number 12, that the petitioner satisfactorily address the comments in the Traffic Safety Board review letter dated February 2nd, 2023 to the satisfaction of that board. Number 13, that the petitioner requests from the Amherst Town Board permission to install 2 new public hydrants on Fruhoff Avenue and Chateau Terrace respectively, as stipulated in the Town of Amherst Fire Chiefs Association memorandum dated February 10th, 2023, and install same. Number 14, that the fence along the north property being of a shadow box style and the fence along Fruhoff be on the same plane as the building wall and be of wrought iron style. Number 15, that the concerns raised by the Town of Amherst zoning enforcement officer in the Planning Department letter dated April 14th, 2023 be addressed to the satisfaction of that officer. That's it.
Does everyone understand the conditions?
Yes.
Okay. With that, let me just ask the question, because the gentleman in the back is concerned about the sighting. We want to make sure that whatever one decides on is taken care of, right?
We could amend that to the fence. Well,
the sighting of the,
No, it's the fence. The fence wants to be.
the fence, yeah. Well, the resident on Fruhoff wanted a vinyl fence. The resident on Chateau wanted a brick wall.
all right,
So
okay,
we,
just as long as people can work together and work it out, that's all. All right, got it. Everyone understands the conditions as they were read. Having said that, we have a motion, we have a second. Please, roll call, please.
Gill,
No.
Gilmore.
Yes.
Giuliani.
Yes.
Khan,
Yes.
Conversi,
Yes.
Raphael.
No.
4-2, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item, item number 4. This is a rezoning, final plat review.
final plat, and there are some conditions.
And there are some conditions. So would you like to review those conditions, Mr. Palumbo?
Recommend that this final plat be granted with 4 conditions.
Excuse
No-
me? Why don't we wait a second here? We got a couple of people leaving here. Okay.
Recommendation is that the final plat be granted with the following 4 conditions. Number 1, that the public improvement permits are required. Number 2, that pursuant to Chapter 160 of Town Code, this developer shall make a payment of $10,616.69 to the sewer remediation fund prior to the issuance of any plumbing permits or acceptance of any PIP applications. Number 3, that as part of the required PIP for the roadway and utilities, ADA ramps be located directly across from the existing ramps on the opposite sides of the streets to avoid skewed or future crosswalks. Number 4, that the petitioner satisfactorily address the remaining comments of the Town of Amherst SWIP Officers Review Letter of May 3rd to provide final stormwater calculations.
Thank you. Does everyone understand those conditions?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have a motion?
A question, can I have a discussion before the motion?
We can do that if you'd like.
Yes. This project has come before us several times. I think it is 10 houses at one time, and then 8 and 6 and 8. Please, can somebody refresh my memory? Was there an agreement, a legal agreement of a certain number of houses?
To 8.
So this has been agreed upon.
It's right there. Yep.
Thank you. No, I see the 8, but I don't know about the agreement. Okay.
Okay. So again, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Dell and Carey. Roll call, please.
Gill,
Yes.
Gilmore.
Yes.
Giuliani.
Yes.
Khan. Yes. Henberg.
Yes.
Raphael.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right. I think the next item is the director's report. What? Do we want to do the minutes first, or do we want to do the director's report first? We can do whatever we want. What's that?
Adjourn the meeting first.
No, we can't. We still got actions to go. You want to go home? We got 4 meetings to go yet tonight. I'd like to hear Mr. Howard first.
Where's Jeffrey?
Or are we waiting for someone? What would you like to do?
Say again? I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
State your name and address, please.
Sure. Daniel Howard, Town Planning Director. Good evening, Planning Board.
You know, it is. We can hardly hear you up here.
I know if I get too close, it gets
It
muddled.
vibrates. I know.
Right,
It's
so
far.
maybe it's a CIP request.
I think it is.
Replace the microphone.
Because it is. I mean, we're having difficulty here.
It's in the plan to redo.
Because it is, I can understand that you can't hear out
Yeah.
there, because we're having a difficulty here.
Yeah, I sit here and listen to meetings. I'm always
Okay.
disappointed with the sound.
All right.
So, I'll try again. Dan Howard, Town Planning Director. We're here to do a brief director's report to the board. In particular, tonight, what we'd like to do is get you acquainted with the proposed local waterfront revitalization program plan that the town board will be considering over the course of the next month. This is a project that's been ongoing for 3 or 4 years now. I've lost track. It's been so long. The town has worked in conjunction with a consultant, EDR, out of Syracuse, New York, and with the New York State Department of State on this project. We've gotten to the point now where we have a proposed plan that will be before the town board for action, probably in early June. They will conduct a hearing on this at their meeting on Monday night. In addition to that, they'll be asked to consider the approval of a local law. It's called a consistency review law, and that will basically outline what the town will do to adhere to the provisions of the plan in accordance with the state's desires. So in order to get you familiar with the plan, I'm going to ask Jeff Zakowski, who's been the project manager. He started off with Ellen Cost. You may remember Ellen. You know how long Ellen's been gone. So add another 2 years to that when she started it with Jeff. It's been a long time. Yeah, but Jeff's heroically, in my mind anyway, carried this thing through to the point where we've got a great plan, a good document here. It should ensure the town's best use of its inland waterway waterfronts. That's Ellicott Creek and Tonawanda Creek. And so I'm going to ask Jeff to do a little presentation to get you acquainted with that.
Yes, my name's Jeff Sikowski. I'm the town of Amherst landscape architect at the planning department. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So we have different functions in the planning department. We're at the point where the long-term range planning is intermixing with the current planning operations that will involve the planning board. So what you see here in the next graphic is two inland waterways that bisect the town north and south and east and west. Town has considerable amount of linear footage of waterways within the town. The Department of State, New York State Department of State Local Waterfront Revitalization Program is what we did under Executive Law 42. The town board initiated, or the town started this in March 2018. They initiated a contract with the consultant in 2019-20. So we've been doing this for 5 years, and now we're at the point where in the next month or two, the planning board will be seeing information that you hadn't previously seen before. So I'm just going to quickly just go through the plan. It's 416 pages. All information is online. If you need it, you can email us and we can provide any documentation you want. We also have an executive summary that's much smaller. But the benefits to the community is what the state's trying to do across all over New York State. Some of these communities that you would never expect have an inland waterway now have the ability to be part of this program. They opened it up to a large part of New York State, and now the town of Amherst is about to be part of this. You can seek funding for economic reasons. There's environmental and just access to water. The town is now available, if you look at the CFAs from the governor, there's $16 million available through the LWRP that previously the town did not have access to. We also have to make sure that this is in conjunction and is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. And we also have identified waterfront groves which match, most likely match the comprehensive plan and the different parts that we show in our focal areas. So within the actual plan, there's 7 sections. You're going to be seeing the Appendix A section, but Section 1 is just the boundary itself. Section 2 is the inventory analysis. Section 3 is the policies. Section 4 is the projects. Section 5 are local laws that apply to this. And 6 and 7 are just what the state requires, showing that the town has met their boilerplate template. All the different communities have to have that same text within their document. So this is the actual boundary. It's 8.19 square miles. You can see we've divided up into 2 sub-areas. The purplish is the Tonawanda Creek sub-area, and the pinkish is the Ellicott Creek sub-area. With anything within this boundary proposed, we will have them fill out a form, and they'll have to adhere to Executive Law 42 under the New York State Department of State's Inland Waterways. We formed an advisory committee back in 2018. We did multiple site visits within that boundary. Once we formed the boundary, we went through it and we had multiple revisions. We found within this boundary different facets of the creeks and inland waterways that nobody knew existed. The next slide is the policies, which is Section 3. So these are standard. All inland waterways have to follow 44 policies. Just keep in mind that we have Ag District 17, which is special, so we specified that in this. We have the local blue rated properties, which you've been dealing with recently. Blue coded properties are historic properties that are locally significant. And then the other significant area that we identified were those scenic views. You saw on a previous slide where the boundary was, there's these red dots. Within the document, we identified those as scenic, so that's also local to it. The rest of the policies are in general to what the state wanted within their document. These are some of the waterfront planning projects you may have seen from other initiatives that we've had throughout the town. This is where the $16 million that's available, we can now apply for grant funding for those. The next slide is the location. You can see it's intermixed throughout the entire town for the most part, and we have identified with most of those dots. You see the green dots, most of that land is either state, county, or town, or county or state right away. So how does this influence the development and the planning board? So first, there's 2 concurrent reviews taking place at the state level. There's seeker, and now there's the consistency review law through the LWRP executive law number 42. Ellen was trying to match it so that the type 2 actions in seeker matched with the minor actions in the LWRP, but that didn't quite work. But for the most part, if you see a major site plan, that will trigger the applicant to have to fill out now this WAF, which is a waterfront assessment form. It's similar to an environmental assessment form. Some of the information can be copied and pasted. The rest applies to what you saw on the slide with the policies. They may ask more specifics about the existing and/or proposed water uses and just the environmental concerns. However, most of that's already taken care of in the seeker process with the EAF. So we'll have them do that, and within the blurbs, there'll be an additional recommendation from a reviewer. Most likely, that'll be me at this time. You'll see within the blurb whether or not we recommend that the project is consistent or not consistent with the LWRP Executive Law 42. We'll have reasons for that. If it's not consistent, which most likely will not happen, you have the opportunity to still approve the project with conditions or make the applicant revise the project completely and go back to square one. We may have conditions in there that don't necessarily have a local law. So for example, we may ask for a riparian buffer, but nowhere in the local law does it state that you have to put in a riparian buffer, so the developer doesn't have to do that. We do have the local blue rated properties, but there's a local law where you have to file, if you file a demo permit, you have to go through the Historic Preservation Commission. The Department of State specifically asked if we had local protections like that, and that's one of those local protections. Other than that, we don't have any specific local protections. So as long as they fill out the WAF and the EAF form, they should be good. If we find any inconsistencies, we will notify you and identify why it is. But again, you still have the opportunity to approve a project with the conditions, or if it doesn't meet it, you could just send it back and they revise the project, and then you can approve it then. If you have any questions, I'm here to.
Ready?
Oh, can you just go to the next slide? So this is just a flow chart we have in the executive law. It just shows the new step that we have, and it's in conjunction with our current planning process. We're going to just try to make it where it wickers in to the existing major site plans. You now are an agency, and so is the planning director and the zoning board of appeals. So you will make the determination whether or not it's consistent. The planning department will make the recommendation to you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any questions? Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Howard? Thank you. All right. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, please.
Gill?
Yes.
Gilmore?
Yes.
Giuliani?
Yes.
Khan? Yes. Hedberg? Yes. Raphael?
Minutes pass 6-0. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved and second. Thank you, folks. We'll see you next month. We could if you wanted to. I know, I probably would.
You want more?